Welcome to the official YouTube channel for me, the Colin Cowherd Podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button right there so you don't miss any of our football content this postseason. Going to have instant reactions after every big game. Thanks. All right. Philadelphia going to the NFC Championship against Washington. Again, we'll get to Jaden Daniels later. Philadelphia 28, Rams 22. It was 13-10 Philly at half, closer than I thought. And I'll give the Rams credit. I still feel they're about 4 players away. I think, again, like I felt last year, they're just incredibly coached, smartly quarterbacked, a little Puka reliant. Kyron Williams, again, a big fumble. He fumbles too much. Remember, Cam Akers, they shipped him out of town. He fumbled too much. I feel like Kyron Williams is getting to that point where he's fumbling in big games. But Philadelphia, Jalen Carter was spectacular. Awesome. Saquon Barkley was spectacular. And when I watch Philadelphia, I mean, they have the best interior D lineman in the league along with Chris Jones. They have the best running back in the league along with McCaffrey, who's hurt. This team is not led by Jalen Hurts, and it's not a knock. I just feel like it's their physicality on that defensive front. I feel like it's these young corners. You know, I was thinking about this with Saquon Barkley. I always root for great players to play with great teams. LeBron to Miami. Ohtani needed to be a Dodger or a Yankee, not an Angel. And I look at Saquon Barkley, and he was just too damn good to be stuck in a circus in New York. Now, maybe he doesn't rise to Ohtani or LeBron, but I will say this. I really believe this. Just in terms of jumping over people. Remember when he jumped over that player backwards? Yeah. John, he is on a short list of the best running backs I've ever seen. Maybe he's not Walter Payton and Barry Sanders. Maybe he doesn't have the dexterity of Christian McCaffrey. John, he's one of the 5 or 6 seminal running backs I've seen in my life in terms of just talent. I think he's sensational.
Yeah, I mean, I think in recent memory, just as a pure runner between the tackles, when you talk about vision, power, and speed, I think he's got to be on the short list with Derrick Henry and Adrian Peterson, who are 2 lock Hall of Famers. Right. The difference is Adrian Peterson got to play on some pretty good teams in Minnesota, and obviously Derrick Henry had Vrabel, the Titans, and now he has the Ravens. I thought today, and I said this, I did a quick reaction after that game, I thought today was a pretty big Howie Roseman muscle flex because the quarterback, we watched 4 quarterbacks today. 3 of them all have something in common when they pass, and then there's Jalen Hurts, who just feels like everyone's so critical of Kellen Moore. It's like, guys, you can call any play you want. In the pocket, he's a coin flip. You have no clue what's coming, and usually it's more tails than heads. Saquon Barkley, they got for under $30 million guaranteed in a day and age when guards are getting $50 million. Jalen Carter is a good example of, let's face it, he was drafted 9th. He was the best player in that draft by a country mile, pure talent. But from 4 to 8, everyone was terrified, and it took balls to draft him. But you not only needed balls to take him, you needed the infrastructure then of high character leaders. They had Fletcher Cox, Jason Kelsey. They had a bunch of Georgia guys. So they took the risk, but they had the infrastructure there. I mean, Saquon and Jalen Carter and Jared Verse were the 2 best players. But Jared Verse, you could argue, relatively easy pick if you need a defensive lineman. High character guy, great player. I mean, Jalen Carter he had to leave the combine to go to the police station. I mean, remember that story? This was a walking red flag who is an all-time great talent. I mean, honestly, one of the more talented guys in the last 5 years of the NFL draft. I mean, today it was just, what is going on? Their talent with just those 2 guys, and then on top of the rest of the talent that they have on the team, how well they can play with their quarterback. It is conceivable they could win a Super Bowl and he could not throw 150 yards in any playoff game or the Super Bowl. That could be on the table because how good they are.
Yeah, I mean, I said last week, I thought Bo Limmer, the rookie center, 6th-round Arkansas, and Jalen Carter was a problem. I will say this in defense of Sean McVay. I mean, but that safety cut it to 16-15. John, I kept watching this game thinking, how in the hell are the Rams this close? They don't have the personnel. They just don't. I thought their offensive line played well. It was one of those games that got really loose, really fast. It's almost like, it's like when you play the Dodgers in the playoffs. At some point, if you go up against Ohtani, Betts, and Freeman, and there's guys on base, Teoscar Hernandez, you're like, shit, we don't get a break here. Philadelphia can just make play after play after play on both sides of the ball, and the Rams, you really have to be smartly designed to face Philadelphia because the games go sideways. They can go on a 4-play drive and it's Saquon, Goddard, A.J. Brown, Hurts, and you're like, shit, that's 80 yards in 4 plays. But I thought the Rams did a good job to hang around in like really bad weather for an LA team on a short week.
I think the conversation has dramatically changed this year, but I think the way Mike Tomlin was talked about probably from like 2015 up until like last year is actually what Sean McVay is. I mean, what he does to overcome as an underdog, I am totally with you. One last week was like a Picasso moment for the guy. His city's on fire. He has to pick up his whole, not just his team, but their family and their animals and fly out to what was a road game at Minnesota. Then take a team. I mean, think about this. We talk about Miami nonstop. Well, they're in 75-degree weather. Well, what weather is LA in? The difference is the way him and Les build that team. Like, they take Jared Verse and Braden Fisk. You know where those guys translate to? They could play in Alaska. They'd be awesome players.
Yeah.
They build a tough team. This is what the Niners did for years. Build a tough team. It doesn't matter where you play. Part of the reason Miami sucks in cold weather, they have a soft team. For him to go and do that, I mean, Jared Verse, the 3 best players on the field today were Saquon Barkley, Jalen Carter, and Jared Verse, who was a man amongst boys. And the difference is listen, Jalen has a matchup problem against unless you're playing Larry Allen, he's going to be better than your guard or center. Jared Verse is going up against 2 of the better tackles in the league. I mean,
I was watching, John. I was watching today, and the 2 best defensive players I've ever seen in my life are Reggie White and Lawrence Taylor.
Yeah,
and I was just thinking against Philadelphia's O-line, I'm like, holy shit, are we looking at like not Lawrence Taylor, but the closest thing to Lawrence Taylor? Now, I think Lawrence, a lot of what Verse does is he just bulldozes you. He goes right at you. He doesn't have kind of the ability. I don't think he's quite as athletic as Lawrence Taylor, who was.
Yeah.
But you look at Philadelphia's tackles, and you watch what Verse did as a rookie. I mean, I guarantee you, if you're Kyle Shanahan, or you're McDonald in Seattle, or you're the guy down in Arizona, I mean, when you put that film in, you're going to draft an offensive tackle this year. Like, you have to get that right. You cannot face the Rams and Verse for the next 7 years if you don't have your tackles right.
Yeah, I talked to someone who was at a joint practice this year with the Rams, and he said about 5 snaps into their first practice with him, some of their veteran guys on their team were like, holy moly, who is this guy? And the thing with Jared Verse, do you know who he reminds me of? And I don't know if he's going to become this good, but what Khalil Mack was early on in his career with the Raiders.
Yeah.
Because Khalil Mack's first year for the Raiders, he had 4.5 sacks because the pushback's always, first only had 4.5 sacks. It was pretty clear. I remember a buddy on that coaching staff with the Raiders. Now, their talent on that team wasn't very good. The first OTA practice, he's like, this guy's the best player on our team by a mile. Now, that's not necessarily the case on the Rams because they got Puka and Stafford.
Right.
But he clearly has a chance, like, this guy could win Defensive Player of the Year.
I think he is their best player. I think
you
Matt
could argue
Stafford,
that right now. Him or Puka.
Yeah, Matt, Puka, and Jared Verse. Jared Verse was on the field today with his shirt off before the game. Dude, it just doesn't look normal. Like, it's like, I mean, his speed. Remember last week against Minnesota when he's picked up the fumble and scored, and then he was chasing down Sam Darnold, and you're like, does he run like a 4.45? Like, how fast is he for 265?
Well, it's one thing to have the 9 sacks last week against that offensive line. What'd they have today? 6 or 7? I mean, they had 16 sacks in 2 games. They said on the broadcast they had under 40 on the season. I mean, it's like, where is this coming from? And to me, it's really – and Braden Fisk went out of the game, which I thought, on some of Saquon's runs, Braden Fisk having him in there as an extra body, that's a big deal. You only dress so many guys in a game. He gets hurt early. I think you saw as the game went on the attrition of just the guys being out there. But I'm listen, the Eagles should win that. They were basically a touchdown favorite for a reason. Their talent is, I would say now them, the Chiefs, and the Bills, you would say subtract the quarterback. They are the most talented team. But the coaching job by McVay and him hiring his buddy Shula, where there was a lot of pressure, he felt a little insecure about how good has that guy been? I mean, down the stretch, getting those guys going. I thought today was, I was kind of rooting for the Rams to win because I like historic moments from coaches. And it's like, how is McVay has this team on the brink of a Super Bowl with this talent? And Stafford, he'd been so bad outside. And I know his numbers weren't great, but I
He
thought he
was
made some
fine.
big time plays, when
Yeah,
it
he
had
had
to
a
be
couple
made.
no lookers. Saquon Barkley against the Rams this year rushed for 464 yards, 4 rushing touchdowns, 8 receptions for 74 yards. He's a superhero. He basically saved Nick Sirianni from getting canned, Jalen Hurts from harsh criticism, and AJ Brown going off the rails. I mean, really, this team is about Saquon Barkley.
For sure.
To me, it really is. He's a superhero. It doesn't. I mean, this is what's amazing about that. I have this conversation with people around the league, either reporters or executives. This letting him go to the Eagles from the Giants is to me a fireable offense, and I'm never calling for a GM's job. But Jesus, like I remember when they made that move, and I remember saying on the air, so he's going from arguably the bottom 3-0 line to the best with Jalen Hurts and 2 receivers that you can't cheat in the box. Like Barkley in New York had a quarterback that didn't move, or they didn't do a lot of running with him, and they were bad at receiver because it was pre-Malik Neighbors. So you could just cheat. You could bring a strong safety in the box. So and it was like, guys, you can't put a safety in the box against Philly. I mean, it is the least, it's like KD to the Warriors. Although with KD, you thought, well, geez, they got so many guys that want to shoot. On this team, because Jalen's so limited as a passer, he's, as we've discussed, nobody in the league I talked to, everybody went, oh, he may rush for 2,000 yards with his team.
Well, I think John Mara got a lot of like weird criticism for his comments in Joe Shane's office when he said, "I don't think I can sleep at night if I lose him," and everyone's like, "What? Why is he so obsessed with his star player?" And it's as simple as this guy's been around the team for a long, long time and seen.
Yeah.
Obviously, Lawrence Taylor's one of the greatest players. He's seen some of the Eli teams. He has a pretty good understanding of what a superstar player looks like.
Yeah.
And it feels a little bit like when Joe Shane said, I don't think he's going to go to the Eagles. And then he goes and he has a historic season. Now he has a historic playoff game. Like when you tell your parents, like, and they're just like, do not do this, do not do this. And you do it anyway. And then it blows up in your face. You have to walk back and look them in the eye. How can those guys walk into the office tomorrow if they have to cross John Mara in the hallway? I mean, this guy just carried the team. Your bitter rival that's right down the street. I mean, he's a superstar. Like you say, his individual year is as good of a year. I mean, Terrell Davis got to the Hall of Fame based on 2 years. 2
Yeah.
years. If they were to win the Super Bowl and this guy has another 150 yards, another 160 yards in the playoffs, and he would run for a lot of yards if they play Buffalo because they don't have a great run defense, that's one of those. Obviously, they kept their jobs this year. How could you look at them the same? You cannot look them in the face and go, I can't. I can't. And listen, it's running backs and the value, and we get it, but there aren't that many humans that can play like that on the field. I would say the same thing about the Titans GM got fired. You're like, wait, Derrick Henry just cost the Ravens $8 million. That's what it cost the Ravens, $8 million. And he ran for 1,700 yards. He's clearly one of the best players on the planet. We couldn't have just used that this year. Like, I think sometimes these decisions, get a lot of people fired really fast. I think Joe Shane and Brian Dable are the only reason they have a job right now. And I'm with you. Like, I don't want these guys to lose their job and have to pack up their family. But as John Mara said, like, he doesn't want to fire anyone anymore. Like, he's just tired of firing people. If he had like, if these guys had replaced Tom Coughlin, these guys would have been fired 3 weeks ago.
That's right. He doesn't want to be the Raiders.